Hello to the people. I didn't tweet this out, so we're just gonna go with not tweeting it out this month. That's just what the choice that I am making. But hello, hopefully all of you were able to get through YOLK by Mary H.K. Choi, because that was the book this month. Oh, StreamYard tell me that no one is here. Mayhaps this was a mistake and I did not promote this as one should have promoted it, in which case okay, someone is here now. Anyway, in which case, hopefully next month will be better. But we read this. Hopefully y'all had a great time. I gave it another 5 stars. You also gave it 5 stars. You love to see it. I don't think people giving this one low ratings would be as hurtful as during the Permanent Record stream, because Permanent Record, yeah. that does make sense. Like, I'm not gonna say that this is like the world's lightest and brightest, easy and breezy book to read, because it's definitely not. It's definitely not that. I will say that the second time I read this, I feel like maybe because I already knew what was gonna happen. Hi, hello, welcome. The second time, like this time reading it, it didn't hit me as hard as the first time. Welcome. Like when I read it back in May, did it come out in May? No, it came out in March, I think, if I remember. I have a feeling we're all going to regret that next month, because next month's pick has like 1 positive review. I think it's like the lowest rated book on my Goodreads TBR, which isn't, indicative of all of the books that I own, but where that overlap exists, October's book is the lowest rated. But for me, Mary, like, she just doesn't miss. So I feel very safe with Mary. And I know that Jenny Lee, I know Anna Kay is a good book. And then the last one, The Marvelous, I've heard some questionable things about. So like maybe there might be a couple more misses. But going back to YOLK, this time I like, the first time I read it, I felt that like I didn't cry, but I could have. I feel like when I really nail it, then I really nail it. But when I do miss, I really miss that. Yes, that is. I think that her best book for me is still A Permanent Record. Like, this was. I feel like this was the culmination of both of those things, because Emergency Contact, you get to see Choi really expressing love for Texas, and then Permanent Record, it's like her love for New York, and then YOLK combines the two. The Texas moments in YOLK are still my favorite. Like, the entire time I was rereading, I reread it in a night, so like I can't be like, oh, the days I reread it like on some Zoom sprints. But while I was reading, I was like, are we in Texas yet? Like, can we get to Texas? Everything that happens in Texas is just my favorite. And then when she comes back to New York and she has to talk to Patrick, still love Patrick. Patrick is a great character. I love to see it. And then after Texas, you get the scene at Overeaters Anonymous. It's just like quality moment on quality moment on quality. Like, the first half, I think, is solid, but it is like the weaker half. Like, even the confrontation that Jane and June have over June using Jane's name, like, I thought that was also a really interesting conversation for them to have. And then the book, I still am a little bitter at how the book ends, because the book is like 400 pages. And it's such an open ending that I wasn't prepared. Although I guess I would say that Choi's backlist, those are also pretty open-ended to me. Maybe the people disagree, but I'm really happy that so far of the comments that I can see, people have been giving this 5 stars. Because again, I wasn't about to be the person to reread and then have the rating go down. So I'm happy that I didn't have to be that person. I would have been a little bit embarrassed coming on here. some of that worry did exist. The first time I read it, I also was like this. When I first read it and I said, but we're not gonna see this through. Like, this is the end. Like, this is what you wrote. I was very upset. Like, I really wanted a more satisfying conclusion to what was happening with June. I think that I don't think, well, I think that Mary would want June to survive. So I think that June survived. Like, I can't imagine a world where June died, because I just refuse to live in that reality. And I am not going to believe that that was a thing that Mary was going to write. I don't think that was going to be what she wrote. I can't live there. I refuse to even ponder that. Look, I don't think it happened, because I just refuse. I refuse to entertain the notion that June died on that table. And I mean, technically, if you want to get real technical with it, even if June died on the table, only Jane died. And so technically, June exists. Technically. Although I did think that the way that they they structured that, definitely, I think that, how do I say this? Jane lost a lot more in this plot, this convoluted mess that June created than June did. Like, of all the things that happened, it was a little much. And I also thought it was very strange that, like, although I guess no, because the book takes place over the course of at least a month. And most places make you wait just like 30 days to get insurance again. So, like, I don't know. I did feel like maybe June was being a little irrational in stealing her sister's identity and then never moving to, like, find another employer or get insurance. Like, she jumped straight into identity theft. And I still think that was a little fucked up. And I did appreciate that Jane also thought it was fucked up, and that they never really, like, Jane, I don't want to say accepted, but like, Jane went along to get along, but she was still like, you still can't die. Like, just so you know, like, we're doing this and I'm here, but you can't die, because that means I'm dead and I would like to stay alive. And I did like how the book didn't drop that thread, even in like the happier moments and the moments where we were seeing their relationship. So that was nice for me personally. Maybe others disagree. I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was a very nice interaction for sure. I thought that it worked well in the context of what was happening. Because, yeah, I think it would have been a little too easy to be like, yeah, I stole your identity, and then like the sisters get along. And then even when they were getting along, there was still like, it don't really matter what I do, what fuck shit I do, because you stole my identity. Like, you committed a federal crime. So you can be annoyed with me all you want, but you committed a federal crime here, and I'm supposed to be like the sister, like the fuck up sister or whatever. So I liked seeing their relationship. I liked seeing them come back together. There was just, I think there are definitely things in YOLK that don't work, because again, it's not like my favorite Mary HK Choi. Definitely isn't my favorite Mary HK Choi, but I think that of the things that don't work, there are more things that do work. for me personally. Am I a biased source? Yes. I like to think that Mary could put out a book that I don't think is 5 stars. I don't know how accurate that thought is. That could just be me deluding myself. You can't say the Texas scenes were your favorite because it was enlightening, but the interactions were, and the interactions are great. But you think the scenes in June's apartment were a little bit more. I mean, that's fair. What we will see in 2023. I think it's fair that the Texas scenes aren't everyone's favorite because even in the course of the story, they do feel very disjointed. Like when June just announces that she's going to Texas, and then they have like this argument back and forth, and that whole thing is like it's very contrived. Everything that happens in Texas is very contrived. There is very little reason to see them go to Texas other than to have like these big family scenes. I don't know. There's something about them being back there to a place that June hadn't been since, no, not June, that Jane hadn't been back to, and them no longer being the people they were, but also like in the progress of like turning around and becoming the people that they were kind of I don't know how to like verbalize it, but there's something in that juxtaposition, that transition that I thought really worked for me. Clearly not for everybody. If there were, like I said, those are like the most disjointed scenes, and the scenes in the apartment were definitely better. Even the scene that we had at Jane's apartment where June was like, "You're not staying here." Like, no. Even that was like technically better than going to Texas. And the first time I read it, I was like, we're going to Texas now? Okay. But I don't know. There's something in those scenes that I just really like. I like what they did, what they accomplished, and the things that happened. Well, I guess I like the things that happened after more. Like we got to see Jane really talking to Patrick about how she felt and settling into that relationship, kind of, sort of, or at least open to that relationship in a way that wasn't what it was when she left. Because I just like Patrick. I think he's a very interesting character. I also think that I would personally love, yes, her apartment. Jane was living in the most nasty apartment that I could have ever read about. And I was like, ma'am, I know that it's expensive to live in New York City. I understand. But ma'am, that was a choice. That apartment, that was suffering. Like, I really hated that for her. I didn't like that for her at all. I wanted better for her. And so when June was like, no, let's get you out of here, I was like, see, this is why you're a good sister. Because your sister was suffering. For that alone, it almost made up for the identity theft. I mean, not really, but it could have. It really could have, for how filthy and disgusting that place was. And I think a lot of like the heavier emotional moments happened in that apartment that were also just like a little uncomfortable to have to read about. And those heavier elements of Jane's disordered eating weren't present at June's apartment. So that was also very comforting for me personally. So that was a bonus. Patrick, again, bonus. Love that for him. I almost wish, like, here's the thing. I like seeing the development of Jane and June. And I appreciate the idea of a romantic subplot. But I felt like at times the romantic subplot wasn't as subplotty. It was almost like a co-equal plot. But then it wouldn't ever get the support that it needed to be co-equal. So it was weird. It almost felt a little underwritten at times. So whereas like, I like Patrick, but maybe the story would do better without Patrick. And mayhaps we could just see her friend group. Because I did think that it was a little sad that Homegirl had like no friends. Like we saw her friends at the beginning when she was like eating with her like ex-boyfriend, but even he wasn't really like a friend. And she didn't have any of the friends in Texas that she could like really reconnect with. And so she had Patrick, who was kind of an old friend, but also her love interest, and then her sister. And I mean, I think that part of Jane's issue in New York was that she was so isolated. But I was like, girl, you don't got nobody. And I think that almost would have been a better storyline than what she had going with Patrick, as much as I like him. But we'll never know because that's not the book that we got. Yeah, like it's definitely liking the idea of Patrick more than no, not really. Like I said, like this was just floating in the wind, and then she kind of had I mean, she had that one lady. Was that wasn't the Ivy though? Like the super old lady who was at the Overeaters Anonymous meeting, who Jane was always like glamorizing in her head. So like at the end, she did have like the Overeaters Anonymous group, but we only saw like the one scene there, so it wasn't even like, yeah, Cruella. I was like, that's we go. So it's not even like they were an actual support system. It was just like the building blocks of a support system. So like a lot of the plot lines in this story aren't resolved on the page. So like we don't really get a resolution on the page to Jane's journey. We just see her taking the first steps there, and we don't get the resolution to June's journey either. So I guess that it's kind of nice in that way that like the sisters, where they started and where they end, parallel, but at least they have each other, assuming of course that June makes it. But I also don't think that she died. I don't think she did. Like, I don't think so. And then they also had their mom, because her mom was there at the end. So they got to do all of that, and they talked about the sister that they didn't get to have. So like it came really full circle in terms of like the parallels of their journey at the end. But I still would have wanted more. I just want more. Because I know the book is it even 400? I think it's 300 something. I put this book jacket on upside down backwards again. It's 390. So I think we could have got to like 420 maybe. And given us a little bit of resolution, wrapped up the storylines a little bit better. But mayhaps that is just because like even the issues that I have wasn't enough for me to be like 4 stars, even though maybe objectively. Yeah, the ending, objectively, it's a 4-star ending. Like, it's nice to look back in retrospect and talk about how the unresolution-ish of it all sort of parallels and mirrors, and they're all the same in that regard. But for me, exactly, it's still 5 stars for me. From an enjoyment level, from an execution level, from a Mary H.K. Choi. Again, I'm nervous about that 2023 release. Still very nervous. But her characters have been adults since we met her, so I think it's more of a natural progression for her. More growth, June's faith, relationship with June's parents. Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff I think would have been nice to see. I don't know. Maybe as much as I like those Texas scenes, even if we had like replaced the Texas scenes with, but then I don't know if you could get rid of the Texas scenes. If you got rid of the Texas scenes and then had the ending with her mom there, I don't know if you could do that. So I don't know what scene you'd have to replace or add in place of everything that happened in Texas to get her mom there at the end. So maybe that's another thing. All of the instances of I really hate reading about disordered eating in books. It's something that always is like, oh, we're doing this. We're doing this. Okay. So all of those moments were just not fun for me to read. Little too intense for me over here. But again, like the second time, I think because I knew they were going to happen, it was fine. And I think that I don't know, like those just too close for me. Definitely closer than anything that June was going through. Like I felt bad for June. Like didn't seem to be very fun what she was going through, but I almost felt like it wasn't as up close because we weren't in her head. And I think that's been another thing that's a little interesting because Emergency Contact was dual perspective. So we got Sam and Penny. And then with Permanent Record, it was just Pablo. And here, I think that the narrative could have been served better by giving us June and Jane and not June through the eyes of Jane. Maybe. I don't know how much, maybe, but the other thing is like, I don't know how much of it would we really would have benefited from getting June's perspective. So I understand why a little bit, but I also kind of want it. So I don't know, but I also think that in this kind of a story, getting both perspectives, again, it could have minimized the impact of both plot lines because Patrick, well, I don't know, like that whole Patrick plot line keeps coming up as a thing that like wasn't serviced enough, but especially if it was split into a dual perspective, I don't think it might not have I might not have noticed that it wasn't as supported. The scenes where Jane got slapped by her mom was mine. You doing fine, then you read it and you turn the page. I mean, I think that in most contemporary novels, I don't notice. The only time I'm actually bothered by a single POV is when I'm reading romance, because the odds of you convincing me in one POV that these people are actually falling for each other are very slim. Don't know if I actually believe it. So like there, I want both. Regular contemporary, I don't think about it too often. But here, because both of the journeys are such like, even when June starts opening up to Jane, there's still like this clinical aspect to just June's personality that filters through how she interacts with her sister and how she interacts with what she is going through, that it's like, not only do I have the barrier of Jane and her getting over all of her childhood, like, I don't want to say resentment, but everything that they went through is like in their youth, growing up, everything, then the distance that they had. To hear what June is saying, I have to then get through the clinical way that June is describing these things. And it's just like, if I could just get in your head for just a couple of chapters, would appreciate it. I also think that like, because June was the driving force behind the Texas chapters, Jane was just kind of really floating through those scenes because those were more for June than they were for Jane. And so I think that aspect would have been better handled through June and not Jane through June. And then, I mean, June through Jane. Also, these names, I really like when Jane was complaining, I was complaining because I was also like, this is which one, like, didn't like it. So it was bothersome. So, like, the story I don't think was hindered by it being a single perspective, but I do think that there were certain parts in June's storyline that I think would have been better served. But I also don't know that the open-ended ending would have hit as hard or as satisfying with it. So like, I understand why. Yeah, like she was going down memory lane. We had to hear about, when we heard about the little sexual assault that happened, I was like, this was not what I was signing up for. Like, all of Mary H.K. Choi's books are very they all have very heavy elements. They all tackle very like visceral emotions and like things that people go through at various stages of their lives. But I was like, not prepared. I was like, we already have cancer and we have the disordered eating. Now we have sexual assault. Like it was a lot in a very short amount of time. But yeah, like Jane was just kind of like going down memory lane, and then she was also like kind of being motivated to interact with her parents, but it was just weird. Like I think that those scenes specifically would have been better served through June's perspective, but I do think that had Mary written them through June's perspective, it might have affected the pacing in a way that the book wouldn't have worked. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. Not gonna Can't really hide that one. Hard agree. Hard agree there. I definitely didn't need, for me. I didn't ooh, my bad. I definitely didn't need it. Definitely could have lived without, could have lived a very happy life without, but like we don't get to live in that reality. I will say that is a recurring theme, and I don't know if I would say theme, but it is something that recurringly happens in Mary H.H. Choi's books. So I can't say that I was surprised at its inclusion because it's happened in all three so far. But I felt that this one was definitely the most visceral of all of them. Definitely the one that I was like hit the hardest by. I mean, maybe Emerging Contact, just because I had no idea that was going to happen. But here I was also like, oh, so this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. I mean, again, only in Emergency Contact, and even there, it's not. It's that one. I think it was played with like a lot. No, it's very similar to what happened here. It's pretty similar. It's like not the same scene, but it's very similar. And then Permanent Record is more harassment than assault, but it's assault. It's assault. It's assault, but it's not to the level that it was here. It's hard to explain. It's really like I said, it happens in Mary Kay Show books. But Emergency Contact is very similar to what happens here, I think. But it's the one time. It's also a third act thing, and it's also in a character's past. Like, look, there's no way to like. I can't sugarcoat it. Like, it happens. Mary H. Kochoi does it. Like, it's. I would not be surprised if there's an assault scene in Milk Teeth, which I still think is a very strange name. I don't understand the title, but I also didn't understand YOLK until I read it. And to be quite honest, I'm not even sure that I fully comprehend, but it's okay. It's not for me to understand. It's not for me to comprehend, apparently. And that's fine. It's okay. I mean, I think I kind of get it, but like, you won't see me launching into any Twitter thread about the meanings of her books. But with that said, I think we have been here for 30 minutes. And because I liked it, I'm finding it very difficult. So I'm not going to ask y'all to continue on this with me. So with that said, I think we can, unless there are any last minute things that y'all want to include, which I will give y'all a couple of minutes. I have no comment. I have I have no comment there. Presented without comment. But while I wait to see if there's any other, that's my take. I mean, all takes are valid. All takes are valid. But while I wait to see if there's any other final takes, final things, we will be rating We Are Totally Normal by Rahul Kanakia for next month. This, again, is the lowest rated book on my Goodreads. It has like a 2.7 star average. So I fully understand if y'all don't want to go on this journey with me because, again, it's so lowly rated and I've heard very few good things about it. And it very much could be another of Curses and Kisses situation. So again, fully understand, especially after something like YOLK, something so perfect. If y'all want to come back in November when we read Anna K, I got you. Makes sense. But October, this month, we're reading We Are Totally Normal. It's very short. I don't think it's even 300 pages. It's not. It's like 282 if you have the hardback. Many people that people like have I haven't, but I do want to because I still think these hands are ugly. Like, not only do they not really line up with their hands, like, this is hideous. It's hideous. Hideous. I need to, but I haven't. I have another book I want to spray the edges of, though, so maybe that's something I'll do today. I don't know. I'm very nervous. Of the other book, not of YOLK. YOLK, I think, will be fine. 2.7 average makes you more excited. So, I mean, love that for you. I'm very nervous. Very nervous. And you are going to read. Okay, so it won't just be me here reading this. I'll have some people to talk to. You know, as much as I hated Of Curses and Kisses, I think we talked about that book for an hour. So maybe if we don't like the book, this will go on for a little bit longer. But I've said all I need to say. I think you guys have said everything that you guys want to say. If there's something that you wanted to say that you didn't say, in like 45 minutes, those will process into a video. You can leave a comment. That's what I think. I think that I've read some really horrible books this year. I very easily have constructed my worst. I mean, they are famous last words, but in my head, like, I have read so many horrible books, like, that are actually terrible. Can't believe they were published. Why did y'all read this? Why were y'all hyping this? That something that has a 2.7 star average, like, I'm nervous, but even at 2.7, that's almost 3. First, that's almost a 3-star. But also, like, that's 2 stars is not on my worst books of the year list. Like, 2 stars, they have some very good company. We have like a Robert Jordan. We have a Brandy Sandy at 2 stars. We have, I think there's a Sarah J. Maas, some like Cassie Clare that I've given 2 stars. Like, 2 stars, not the worst thing that I've read by far ever. So it could be bad. Could be very bad. Could be a low point in the terms of like the Choices book club. But in the grand scope of everything that I've read, I don't know. I am very much looking forward to making it to get my final thoughts out about these books. But that'll be, we're getting close, very close to getting to film that, actually. But I'm going to go now. Thanks for joining me here to talk about YOLK. I look forward to talking with y'all about We Are Totally Normal in a couple of weeks at this point, because we're already in the first week of October. So this live show I will get scheduled once I'm done here. But I will see all of you again very soon with another regularly scheduled video. But until then, and until next time,